And that is what journalism was always about. It's supposed to be objective, unbiased reporting. Unfortunately, that has changed. Young people today think what they see on social media is reality. We really do need to mobilize humanity. We are in an age where people want to get everything in 148 characters. And you can't. Be good to people, be kind to people.
Hey everybody, this is Neil Pastricha and welcome back to the 9th year of 3 books. Yes, it is January 3rd, 2026. We are on the official first full moon of the year. The wolf moon, if you want to call it the wolf moon, that's fine. And it's the 9th year of the show all of a sudden. I mean, we started in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. And I want to invite you back into our third chapter in our Traveling to Africa series with Neil, all right? So you remember chapter 154 with Peter Kamani, the incredible novelist that we hung out with down in Nairobi, or the outskirts of Nairobi. And then we had chapter 155 upstairs in the bookstore, Noria Bookshop in Nairobi again. And since I only went to one city, well, 2 cities if you include Mombasa, in Africa, I've got my third chapter for all of you, and it is going to be a doozy. We are going to be hanging out with Salim Amin. But before we get into that, as you know, our show has no ads, no sponsors, no interruptions, no promotions, but we do have a community of 3 bookers that we think of as a very sacred force. It's one of 3 clubs that we have at the very end of the show. We've got the End of the Podcast Club. We've got the Cover to Cover Club. And of course, we have the Secret Club, which is referenced in today's letter from Dan. Hi, Neil. Thank you for sending me a reading light. And to all of those in the Paper Cutters Club, I often forget about the club and carry no expectations. So opening the package created a moment of surprise delight. Before opening it, my wife and I puzzled over the package. Did you order something? No, did you? I find it funny that anytime she realizes something has come from you, she says something like, "Oh, it's from your Canadian friend." I also just listened to chapter 153 with Carl Honoré and was thinking about your discussion about when a phone fits well into one's day and life versus when it is an unhelpful distraction. You also brought up AI during the End of the Podcast Club and commented on its over-complimentary programming. I agree, but I've also found that an LLM, I use Claude, can be a wonderful companion to reading complex books. I first tried it with Middlemarch last year, and I understood so much more by asking Claude questions. I've now done the same for Jane Austen and William Shakespeare book clubs organized by Henry Oliver. And he's recommending I check out Henry Oliver. I appreciate Claude's patience. No question is too dumb. If I misinterpret a passage, the correction is expressed without criticism, and it lends itself to back and forth exchanges, exploring things like how the meaning of some words has shifted over time. My questions would likely bore a human expert, but Claude doesn't express boredom. While I think I could do without Claude's sycophancy, I suspect the compliments, like brilliant question or great close reading, actually nudge me to appreciate the experience more. I don't want Claude as a companion for everyday life, but kind words combined with deep expertise enrich my reading of hard material. I get so much more out of books than I would without the help. Now I love Jane Austen's work, I didn't before, and I want to read everything by Shakespeare. I would now consider Middlemarch a formative book, which I read at age 48, because of how this experience has opened a door to challenging works of art. Maybe Claude is my metaphorical reading light, to tie this email into a theme. So then, of course, I wrote back to Dan, and he wrote back and said, I just got your responsible waiting in line at Powell's bookstore in Portland, Oregon. I'm only in Portland for a day, and I can't pass up the opportunity to go to Powell's. Your email plus Powell's was great book-loving synergy. And then he said, I found a great use for my reading light. I've been recommending these reading lights now. It's been in my book club, guys. You've seen it. And I did mail a reading light out to everybody who's in the Paper Cut Club. What's the Paper Cut Club? Well, you're going to have to listen for clues. There's a phone number at the end. You got to get the secret word. I can't say more about it. It is our analog only through the mail fan club for the show. And Dan says, I realize I don't need a reading light for reading in bed, since my wife has no trouble sleeping with my bedside reading lamp on. But then when the clocks were set back for an hour this weekend, and it's dark, and I walk home from work, and I love to read while walking, and I don't love reading on my phone, so winter usually means podcasts or music. but not anymore. I realize I can now walk and read with the book light. People might think I'm crazy when they see me, which just brings a mischievous joy to the experience. I love that, Dan. So, book lights, reading lights, everybody. You just stick it on the top of your book, walk down the street, and you've got a little lamp while reading. By the way, I also really love reading while walking. I think I'm going to write that down as an awesome thing. Reading a book while walking. I don't know what it is. It's it's like you're in a place and in another place kind of more combined. It's like doubling the places you're in, right? And yeah, you have to be careful, and I recommend on the sidewalk, not the road, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, reading while walking is great. And I do recommend that, by the way, because a good friend of mine, Jay Pinkerton, who was the editor at Golden Words newspaper at Queen's University, he got hit by a car. And when I asked him, Jay, are you okay? He's like, I'm okay. I broke a bone. I'm fine. I was like, what were you doing? He's like, I was reading a book while crossing the street. So you do have to be careful a little bit. All right, let's get back into Nairobi. We are going to hang out in the studio, the office, the Mr. Burns-sized office, or really kind of like almost like a museum of Salim Amin, who is the shepherder, the CEO of CameraPix. What is CameraPix? Well, that was the company started by his dad, Mohammed Amin, or Mo Amin, also known as the man who moved the world. I'm holding up the book by Bob Smith. This is a guy who saved 8 million lives by photographing the Ethiopian famine. And his photos were the spark that created, the Bob Geldof concert that everybody knows about, Live Aid. And he really kind of helped bring light to the dark continent over, a number of years of a far too short life. He was sadly killed in a plane that was hijacked, and somewhat apropos because he was a photojournalist, the hijacking was filmed, including the crash by newlyweds on a beach in South Africa when the plane crashed. It's a crazy story. We're going to hear more about that. Vis-a-vis he had one child, and his child is still alive, and we met up with his son in Nairobi. And Salim is a fascinating guy of his own right. He is at home taking care of his aging mother who's in her 90s, but he himself is a documentary maker, producer, author. He's a talk show host. He has written 2 books, including one that I'm holding up right now called Kenya Through My Father's Eyes, an incredible photojournalist book with just the photos are just really stunning, like lions and boxers and, African dictators being sworn in at elaborate ceremonies. And he also made the film Mo and Me, The Sound Man, Return to Quorum, Stand Together as One. Those are other films he's made, but Mo and Me, of course, is the one about his dad. He's been published in Time magazine, including when he was a very young child. He has a degree in journalism. He's had his own talk show called The Scoop. And I should mention, by the way, also that the documentary Mo and Me won 15 awards, including a bunch of awards for Best Documentary. So if you want to see it, and I did watch it before interviewing him, it's a really incredible piece. Um, I kind of like drove out of the hotel in Nairobi, via Uber. And when you get picked up at an Uber in a Nairobi hotel, it's a big deal. Like every car has to have all the doors open, all the trunks open. They have dogs like searching and smelling the cars. They have these giant concrete barriers that are lifted up that they have to come down. So like no car can kind of like ram up to the front. There's metal detectors going in and out of the hotel. That's just like to leave the hotel. And then, we're driving past busy streets, um, slum areas, and we kind of make a left turn, and you can sort of see Nairobi gentrifying here. There's little luxury condos type thing coming up, but in a little hidden pocket, there is the offices of CameraPix. And so I go up the stairs in the office. I'm, register. I go through, and I meet the wonderful, kind, magnanimous, gregarious Salim, who I have an instant heart connection with. It feels like we're old friends, and we just have a really powerful conversation talking about a ton of things around kind of injustice, humanity. He has a lot of strong statements about, well, they really aren't strong, but they sound strong today. I don't want to kind of take too much away from it, but you'll see here, it's a really fascinating conversation. I'm really excited to kind of welcome him onto 3 Books, to share his work, to share the kind of memory and homage and kind of legacy that his father created as well. through this conversation, our third and final in our series, Traveling to Africa. I hope one of many Traveling Around the World series. I hope you've enjoyed this. Let's jump into the conversation now.
Good morning.
Good morning, Salim. How are you? You know, I'm usually the one that says like, "Hi, I hit record." I like how you're a curious person. So as soon as I turned, you started it off, which I like. I feel like I'm in a museum, by the way. I feel.
Well, I'm glad you're liking the space.
Yeah.
It is a little bit of a sort of a homage, a museum of interesting objects, artifacts that kind of defined my past and my father's life.
Your past, your father's life. Would you refer to this room as a studio?
No, it's my office. I mean,
an
it's my office, but it doubles up as a studio.
It's like a Mr.
as we can
Burns
see,
office.
yeah.
It's like, that Simpsons office, or it's like, 'cause if people can't see if you're watching a video, it goes right down. There's like a huge desk. And just so people know what I'm looking at, I see many, many old cameras. Okay. I see framed things on the walls, which clearly have a manner of, that's why I said museum. There is a bionic arm, which we're going to talk about. There is like kind of like a gold record, like you kind of see in like a recording studio. There's all kinds of awards. There is hats, like down, you could probably see this if you're watching on YouTube. There's like a dictator's hat.
Yes.
Which dictator?
Mengistu Haile Mariam of Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Who ruled the country from
the early 70s, mid 70s, all the way to 91 when he was overthrown.
And somebody grabbed his hat.
Well, my dad got his hat because he was in there when they overthrew him.
Oh,
he went in with the rebel armies.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we got a lot of stuff. There's a map over on the wall that people can't see, and obviously most people on our show, just so you know, I'm starting to videotape these. I'm starting to put them on YouTube.
Yeah,
but the vast majority of our audience is still audio only. They're at the gym. They're on a long walk with the dog. And so I try to like visually describe the scene. There's a map of the world upside down, and Africa is in the center. The writing is right side up. So you've got Africa in the center of the world, and all 55 African countries labeled.
Yeah, and the idea of that map, it was given to me as a present by my production partner in the U.S., Chip Duncan. So Chip gave it to me, and he basically said, who said the world should be the way it is?
Yeah.
On a map. Why isn't it, the other way around? Who decided that?
Yeah.
So
never mind putting what country in the middle.
Exactly. He said this is a way to say that not everything is the right way up.
Yes.
The world can sometimes be the other way around, depending how
if you're flying in outer space,
you see things from a different angle.
Of course.
Yeah.
There are little statues or lots of other cameras. There's a whole kind of shelf behind us with books, lots of old books, which I love. We are sitting on a giant brown leather couch. I'm patting it now here. I've got my clipboard. I've got books with me. There's like a little metal car, like a safari car.
So this was a Land Rover that was built by blind artisans in Nakuru. So Nakuru is a little bit down near past Naivasha, going up towards the lakes. It's
in Kenya.
In Kenya, yes.
Okay.
And these are somebody
a blind artisan made a realistic Land Rover.
Just
that's
from
like,
touch and feel and
it's like the size of a turtle. Like it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And in the bionic arm, just before we hit record, you said NASA made that.
NASA designed that. It was built in a lab in Youngstown, Ohio. But it was Myoelectrics designed by NASA, because when he lost his arm, he was at that time the most famous cameraman in the world. So
I saw a note saying your dad had his photos published in every single newspaper in the whole world. I mean, that level of virality is not attainable today.
In spite of the technology being available.
Ubiquitous. Even like a friend of mine is Mel Robbins, and she's, she's on Jimmy Fallon now, and she's on Stephen Colbert, and she's on Seth Meyers, and her book's been #1 forever, and she's got more followers on Instagram than ever. But if I went to a newspaper in Jakarta, I don't think I'd see her face. Do you know what I'm saying?
No.
Like that level of everywhere omnipresence is just, it's not attainable because the world's so fragmented.
And given where he came from and his background and his history, he achieved a lot in a very short life.
Your dad was born what year?
He was born in 1943
And where?
in Nairobi.
He was born but his parents were from where?
His parents were from Jalandhar. At that time was India, no partition.
British ruled India.
British ruled India.
And they were born in like the 1910s.
I would say probably earlier than that, probably late 1800s. And my grandfather then came to East Africa to build a railway, like many Asians.
A railway,
and he was a mason. He was a mason, and so he was brought to build the railway here. So posted first in Nairobi, and then when my father was born here, and then my grandfather was kind of moved around. So my dad and his siblings were born in various parts of East Africa.
So your grandparents on your dad's side, because we're going to talk a little bit about your dad, we're going to talk about you. One of your formative books, of course, is about your dad. It's called Mo, M-O, The Story of Mo Amin, A-M-I-N, by Brian Tetley, T-E-T-L-E-Y, published in 1988 by Moonstone Books, which I believe you read when you were like 15.
Yes, that's
maybe it was published in 1985 then. I might have got the wrong pub date.
Maybe. I was 15.
Either way, I
16,
want listeners to know, like, we're leading into your dad because it's a formative book, because you read it very young, but also because we're sitting in the offices in Nairobi of Camera Pix.
Yes.
CAMERAPIX, a company founded by your dad.
Yes.
In the year
1963.
1963. But just going back a little bit, because British ruled Kenya and British ruled India were, part of the British Empire.
Exactly.
And India wasn't India yet. I mean, it wasn't an independent country. That was not till 1947.
Mm-hmm.
And then pretty quickly after, they were like, oh shit, we got to give a chunk of this to Pakistan for the Muslims. Like, how much after that? Was that like a year?
Yeah, no, I mean, 47 was when partition happened, right?
So 44 was independence.
I think independence was independence in inverted commas, was sort of talked about from 44 onwards. But 47 is when they celebrate independence
for India,
for both India and Pakistan.
Also, they same year.
Yeah, same year.
Okay, so
then Pakistan,
Gandhi, but I'm a little rusty. And I guess it wasn't like India was a country and then they split Pakistan off. It was like they did them both at the same time. They did them both.
That was when the British kind of overnight disappeared. But I am, again, divide and rule was the British's, the modus operandi globally, and that's what they did here, splitting up all the countries in East and Central Africa, along borders that were drawn up in Europe by people who had never set foot on the continent. And India and Pakistan was purely a divide and rule. I mean, can you imagine India now, what kind of a powerhouse it would be if partition had never happened? So these are some of the things that I think, sadly, we're paying the price for that now. Look at Gaza and Israel. The British had no right to give any of that land to Israel. They had no right to create. It wasn't their land to give. It wasn't their land to give at all. And this is the tragedy of.
At the time they gave it in 1948, it was called what? The entire.
It was Palestine.
Palestine.
It was Palestine.
And they took a chunk of Palestine, or all of Palestine.
I mean, first they came here. They were looking at Uganda as a place to settle the Jews after the Second World War. And I think they found that it's a little bit too wild for them. Then they tried Kenya. And that didn't work. And again, maybe just too sort of wild for them to settle in. And then, the Holy Land, as seemed to be the right thing to do. But under whose right was it, And the Palestinians welcomed them with open arms because they felt these were, their brothers and sisters who had suffered
oppression
tremendously, in the Holocaust. And so they welcomed them. And look where we are now.
The welcome mat has been long since pulled away.
It's been, yeah. It's
Netanyahu on TV this morning at the hotel gym here in Nairobi, the quote on CNN. And I said to the guy in the gym, I was like, can you turn off the news, please? And then they put on like this dance music. You would know it. It's like, like a Kenyan DJ with like 8 people just dancing behind him the whole time. Beg.
Yeah.
B-A-G.
Oh, okay.
You know?
I
Beg
haven't heard of
6.
that, but yeah.
So that changed the vibe in the gym
Yeah.
pretty quick. But the headline on CNN was Netanyahu declares independent Palestinian state, quote unquote, sheer madness.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I sometimes wake up in the morning and I discuss this with my wife, Rosanna, with our daughters. And we all think, well, have we gone mad? Are we just, because it's insanity. What is happening in the world at the moment?
We're
It's
just watching it happen.
absolutely insane.
We're just watching it happen.
And
whether it's still happening.
The Middle East is a disaster. That it's a genocide. It's a slaughter. What's happening in the U.S. It's just, Trump wants to go and invade Portland, Oregon, for God's sake.
Chicago, LA.
Chicago. Basically any blue
detentions.
state. Any blue state,
Yeah.
that seems to be doing fine. He wants to put his troops in. But it's just the how split the world is, and how polarized we've become. It's shocking.
It's
to me.
shocking. And I just recently read Autocracy Inc. by Anne Applebaum. She's an Atlantic staff writer who talks about the rise of autocracy. And she says this line near the beginning of the book, which really stuck with me, which is during Arab Spring, like the advent of Facebook kind of creating like fervent movements for democracy that like helped to originally overthrow the then leader of Egypt, whose name I have forgotten.
It was not Sisi came in after that. It was the Islamic government.
Yeah,
but I can't remember.
It's okay.
Yeah.
She wrote, and I would remember it after the show was recorded.
Yeah.
But she says, the assumption was that democracy would take over autocracy, and actually the reverse has happened. That autocracy has taken over democracy, because when you have centralized technology and centralized powers, you can actually more easily retain super extreme power and centralized positions. You can weaponize justice, like he's
doing. Trump is doing it.
Put James Comey under arrest.
A guy who actually made him president the first time around, who basically facilitated it and made it easier for him to become president.
Because the Comey report.
Because of the Hillary Clinton's, email. When you look back now, you think, you look and see what is happening now, and you look back at, emails being sent from a private email address, you think, my God, was that really what was so bad at the time, when you see the kind of injustice that is being done now? And it's just crazy.
And I love your eyes right now, because they're glistening, and you're fervent, and you're passionate. No, because you have energy. And your dad is from a Muslim family in pre-partition colonial British India, which became part of Pakistan. When he came over here in 1960,
there would be sort of late 40s. Early 40s.
He was born in Nairobi because his dad came
early
out of the
40s.
railroad.
So early.
But then
40s.
your dad sort of had a secret wedding. Or at least it was a wedding under secrecy, as I understand it, marrying your mom because she's from a different religion.
Because she was Ismaili. Yeah, and it was not acceptable in that.
Yeah, and Ismaili, for those that don't know, how would you describe the
Well, I guess
Ismaili
followers
culture?
of the Aga Khan. So it's a subsect of Muslims, like the Shias, like they're part of the Shia sect. But followers of the Aga Khan. So, all these kind of splits.
10, 15 million around the world,
very-
heavily settled originally in East Africa. Now, obviously, diaspora around the world.
Big in Canada.
Huge in Canada.
And now Portugal as well.
My wonderful chiropractor phase is Ismaili. Yeah, Ismaili, wonderful people. The Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, by the way, for those that may be listening in Toronto or visiting Toronto, it's like a breathtaking masterpiece.
Worth seeing, for sure.
You've been?
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Oh, this is great.
What the Aga Khan has done, we're going off topic here, but what the Aga Khan has done, the previous Aga Khan who just passed away, quite incredible, the kind of work that they've done in places in Southeast Asia.
Hope-like behavior, blessed
Africa.
the poor, building hospitals, building schools.
Universities,
we interviewed
education,
Peter
health.
Kamani, novelist, Kenya-based novelist, and he is a professor at the Aga Khan University.
That's right. He teaches in the journalism department of the Graduate School of Media Studies. No, it's quite a phenomenal story. But yeah, so it was back then.
Yeah.
Being a photographer
Yeah.
first was not a profession, not considered a profession. So my grandfather was, extremely disappointed in my father.
The wayward artist.
Yes, because as like most South Asian families, you had to be doctor, accountant, lawyer.
That hasn't changed.
That's nothing.
That has not changed.
But back in those days, it was even worse.
I still feel this pressure. I'm 46 years old. My dad still thinks I have a shot at med school.
And you do. You're never too old.
I could go to
never
Cayman's.
too old. Never too old to learn. And so they started off on the wrong footing, and my grandfather then kind of, as soon as his term with building the railway was over, there was no doubt in his mind that he was going to go back to what was Pakistan at that time. But he was going to go back and insisted that my father follow him, and that never was going to happen because Dad had already started, photographing, and he was, getting into photography, and he was sort of 17, 18 years old at this point, and decided that he was, never going to go back.
And your dad, for those that don't know, and it's, Muhammad Amin was, as you have said already, the world's most prominent photographer, the world's. And he went to Zanzibar. He was young, in his 20s, right?
Yes, early 20s.
And he took photographs of something you weren't supposed to take pictures of.
Yeah, he stumbled, but using common sense, stumbled across a Soviet training camp.
A Soviet training camp.
Training Zanzibari soldiers and building a missile base on Zanzibar. Now, this is at the height of the Cold War.
Year approximately.
The year was I would say 67.
Okay.
67.
Yeah. So we're like halfway, but
Cuban Missile Crisis is coming up.
Yeah.
And so he stumbled and photographed and filmed the Soviet and East German advisors training Zanzibar troops. They got him. No, they got him afterwards. He got out. He got out, and that footage went around the world.
Viral.
It went around the world. It was used by Kennedy to negotiate with Khrushchev over the Cuban Missile Crisis, because he had evidence that Khrushchev was denying that the Soviets had any kind of interest in Zanzibar or building anything there. So this was a vital piece of evidence that was used to negotiate the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so the KGB then, of course, found out who had shot this footage. So, and Dad was, didn't know this. So all happening behind the scenes. And then he went back to Zanzibar to cover the visit of Anwar Sadat, the Egyptian president at the time. Was a state visit. So it was a normal assignment just to go and cover that. And so he went back to Zanzibar for that. And the KGB picked him up at the airport and locked him up in Kilimamigu prison, which at that time was one of the most notorious prisons. And he was tortured and beaten and for a month.
How?
Tortured all sorts of things. I mean, they whipped him and they, used sort of
electrical.
Yeah, all that kind of, ancient torture stuff.
Ancient torture in the 1960s at a Soviet prison in Zanzibar, where he came out after 28 days. He had lost 28 pounds.
Yeah, pound a day, pretty much.
Pound a day.
Yeah.
And
then he's 22 years old at this point.
Survived, but also thrived after that.
Well, it was his
baptism
of fire. I think he could have at that point chucked it all in and said, "This really is." So would I.
I don't think I would have been like, you know what? I'm going to go to Ethiopia and shoot the famine now.
No, it was his baptism of fire, and he could have given up. I think his whole family told him to give it up. But it just hardened him. It forged him.
Why do you think that happened?
I think he just.
You and I both just said, if we were tortured for 28 days,
I would have given it up in a second.
I would have gone undercover and gone.
But I think he realized that. So he was deported to Kenya. That was one of the conditions of his release, and I think he realized that this is the power that he has with this camera to tell people stories that. The voiceless is something that I think motivated and moved him. And I think he realized that he was able to do this. And he also he wasn't purely, charitable. This was also it was also a very lucrative business
Was it?
because there was not
sell-
many people operating in this part of the world at that time.
You sell the photos to like
And
Reuters or
to
something.
multiple agencies.
Yeah.
You can it became quite lucrative if you were able to get into places that nobody else was. And he was very, very good at that. He may not have been technically the best photographer or cameraman or photojournalist, but he could get into places that nobody else could.
Like that French Coronation. What was that about?
Bukasa, Emperor Bukasa.
So tell us a couple stories about how he got into places, or what places he got into, and then also I'm curious, like how do you get into? How is he doing this?
So I mean, again,
looks
at
like-
the time,
For those that
when
don't know, he kind of looks like if you can picture like he looks a bit like Salman Rushdie kind of vibe, but like he's got like
little
he's got
bit
like glasses, the beard,
the
kind of
goatee and
and he's got this
balding.
hair. I don't mean to say that, but I'm just trying to give people like we can show an image on screen for those on YouTube, but for those listening, it's like picture a guy that like who looks kind of like that. He's in his 20s and his 30s. Tell us some places he got into, and how did he do?
Some of the world exclusives that he got when he came to Kenya, he was obviously starting up. He had to start new, and it was a new territory and new country for him. But a few months after he moved to Kenya. His office was in downtown Nairobi at that time, and a building or so down the street was a chemist, pharmacy, and he was in the office as he was pretty much 24/7. He spent most of his time in the office. This was a Saturday afternoon, and he hears a gunshot, and just instinctively grabs his cameras and goes down. And there's the assassination of Tom Mboya, who was touted to be Kenya's next president after Jomo Kenyatta. Tom Mboya was a very prominent minister, one of the architects of the airlift that took Kenyans to the U.S. to study. Barack Obama's father was one of the recipients of that airlift that Mboya did with the Kennedys, with Bobby Kennedy in particular, and JFK. And so he was a very prominent politician. He was just getting medicines from this pharmacy, and a gunman assassinated him.
From the government?
Well, nobody knows. I mean, it's questionable. People say
somebody wanted him out of the way
because Mboya was a Luo, and Kenyatta and the ruling party at that time was a majority Kikuyu. So
you're talking about tribes names,
tribal names, yeah. So tribalism is one of the serious problems we have on this continent, not just in Kenya but across the continent.
Tribalism is defined as
people of different tribes that
ancestry
that can't really kind of seem to they all want power, and whether it was the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda that led to one of the the darkest genocides in our history, or it was the Luo and Kikuyu tribes in Kenya that led to the post-election violence here in 2007, and one of your previous guests,
Boniface Mwangi, chapter 104, the person who connected us, who I love, Boniface.
Yes, and really, he made his name as a photojournalist covering the post-election violence. So this is where that post-election violence stems from, is from these incidences that happened in the 60s, where tribalism was never addressed. The issues were never addressed. And they keep coming back to bite us in every election cycle.
Although I hear that for Boniface's 2027 election campaign, in talking to his people, they're not bringing tribalism into the race.
The young people now, this generation now, the Gen Zs and others, don't seem to be paying much attention to tribalism.
Good.
Which is good.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll be...
It just takes time to work through these things.
It does. But every conflict in the world has got something to do with tribalism, in different, whether it's religious, whether it's religious differences, or it's ethnicity, or it's color. These are all forms of tribalism, or of prejudice in some way, shape, or form. So Tom Mboya, so he was there with his cameras when immediately after Mboya was shot.
Got a picture of the dead body.
Filmed and photographed the doctors in the pharmacy trying to revive him. the ambulance coming, went into the ambulance with them.
He just walks
filmed-
in.
Well, the ambulance driver was like, panicking and
Yeah,
confused.
it's an
so
emergency.
He told him where to go, which hospital to take him to. Doctors are trying to revive Mboya inside the ambulance, then at Nairobi Hospital. He was there photographing and filming every single.
And it sounds like he's also helpful on the stage.
He was also helpful.
this
He
is
even
one-
went to hide in Mboya's body because that there was a mass of people that came to the hospital to try and get his body out.
Why?
But again, because they felt that he was such a hero,
Yeah.
so they wanted to come and claim the body
And
and
he
stuff.
helped to hide
and
it.
with the doctors, they went and hid it in some other room in the hospital so people couldn't find him. But it was a
Being
massive
helpful is
story.
one tool for getting into places.
It was a massive, massive story.
Of course.
And those pictures still resonate today. And then you mentioned the coronation of Jean Bedel Bokassa, who was the so-called emperor of the Central African Republic. Small little tin pot country.
Yeah, small. Give us a tiny bit of context on this.
It's a Central African Republic is in Central Africa. It's a little country, and Bokassa wanted to be crowned as emperor.
This is the
of this
year.
country. This would be sort of early 70s.
Okay, now we're in the early 70s.
now
You're
it-
in his 30s now, maybe?
Now he's in his his late 20s, early 30s, and there's this coronation that's going to happen that's being styled around the coronation of Napoleon.
Okay.
But this is a
Is this
country.
like a bribery coronation? Is this one of those?
No. This is a country that
Okay.
that basically Bokassa blew a quarter of his country's national budget on this one event.
It's kind of like Trump's heading that way.
I would completely
But
agree
when
with
you
you.
put posters in every building and you make parades on your birthday, you are spending national money in your honor.
Yes,
Whether that's
absolutely.
0.1% of the budget or then 1% of the
Absolutely right.
budget, this guy. So we're talking extreme wealth inequality,
Extreme.
dictatorship, extreme autocracy. Then at that point, we have just so people watching, listening have a rule of thumb. It's 25% of your country's
Yes.
budget you spend
Yes.
on your birthday party, your
On-
coronation, by becoming king, right? And then do tell, they had an official deal with some photo outlet.
Well, yeah. So it was the French, because it was a French colony, a former French colony. The French had obviously got exclusive rights, negotiated exclusive rights to film this. And Dad, sitting in Nairobi, was like, bugger this. I'm not going to. This is my patch. I'm going to go and see this. So they do him and a correspondent. Make some inquiries, and they realize that they're told, yes, you come there, but you have to be properly dressed in a morning suit with the top hat and tails and everything. Otherwise, they will cut off your ears when you arrive. So they don't have this attire. So they go to the local theater company here and they rent this morning suit and top
As if
hat.
they're attendees
So they change on the plane so that when they land, they're doing this. And it's like 45 degrees Celsius, right? Which is over 100 and something degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, double it now 30.
Yeah, and
120.
so it's sweltering hot. And they don't have visas or anything. They haven't got any visas, but the immigration guys are laughing so much because they're sweating and they're laughing so much they just stamp their passports and let them in. So then they come to the church. They don't have anywhere to stay. Everything's booked out. Small little town. So they go and sleep in the church where the coronation is going to happen. And obviously this is, security is not like it is now. It was not like that then. And so they sleep in the church. And the next morning, everyone's getting prepared. And because they're so well dressed, the French media assumed that they were just guests, amateurs taking. It's only when a little bit later on, they realized, shit, this guy's a professional photographer.
He had 6 cameras hanging from his neck.
But he was kind of hiding them. And then he
Yeah.
kind of took them out when they knew the emperor was on his way, or Bokassa was on his way. And there was a fight. The French media started, starting a fight.
Like punching your
Yeah,
dad.
punching each other. And so he just kicked over their cameras. They had set up their cameras on tripods. So he just kicked all the cameras over. And so all their camera equipment shattered on the ground. And as this ruckus was going on, the bugle sounded and Bokassa entered the church. And Dad just went right up the red carpet, right in front of Bokassa, wide angle lens, and walking backwards, photographing the emperor coming in all his regalia and his crown.
Like he must have had,
and he was
must have had
loving
a
it.
crown with like a lion's head on or something.
He had jewels and all sorts of, exactly like Napoleon. And he had a throne set up and built with an eagle, beautiful pictures. And he ended up getting the only images of that. So these are some of the things that, getting into Idi Amin's Uganda. Again,
Tell us this story now. Now what you're,
he's
still early.
Uganda here. This is now early 70s. And there's been a military coup in Uganda. And this army general, called Idi Amin has taken over. But there's, the press corps is all sitting in Nairobi because this was always the base for the foreign correspondents. So he has a black book of contacts. So he calls up State House in Kampala, and the operator picks it up, and he's like,
Kampala is the capital of Uganda.
Kampala is the capital of Uganda.
Uganda is touching Kenya.
It's the bordering the East African community, Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. And the operator picks it up, and Dad just says, "Can I speak to General Amin?" and the operator is like, "Well, who are you?" And so he, without thinking, he says, "Well, my name is Muhammad Amin," and the operator put him directly through to Idi.
My God.
And because I think the operator assumed he's a relative.
So for those that have seen the movie The Last King of Scotland starring Forrest Whitaker, this is one of the most tyrannical dictators of human history. And you just call him on the phone.
Well, you call State House, and like I said, this operator assumed that he was a family member, must be a brother or a cousin because he had the and Dad didn't put two and two together. He didn't think that way. When the guy said, "Who are you?"
It's a
and he said,
last name.
"It is. I mean, it's not common-ish.
I've
But
heard
Muslims. Idi was a Muslim as well.
Yeah.
And so I mean,
but this is like it's not like you'd never heard it before.
No, but the operator in that moment must have thought, "Bloody hell, this is a new president that's come in. It's a relative. I must put him straight through to the general." And Idi was very, very good. He's, and Dad explained, "I'm a journalist in Kenya. I'd like to come and film your triumph, and
Complimentary.
I'll always have to. So he knew he wanted to get on the right side of Idi. And Idi was, loved the publicity, obviously wanted to
But he never
be
let
covered.
any other people in.
And he just said, "Give me the details of your plane, your flight number, and I will meet you at the airport in Entebbe, which is where the airport is in Uganda, and the city where the airport is." And sure enough, he was there on the runway when they came and drove them himself around, Kampala to say, "You see how happy my people are that I've taken over." And this is an example of using your contacts, but then also making the most of the situation that you're in and taking advantage once you get in of, saying and doing the right things. And this is where the experience of being an African in Africa is something that foreign correspondents will have, always had difficulty doing it. The people that came to parachute in for a story and leave, they didn't make those kind of connections and contacts and, didn't know the lay of the land.
Relationship and networking. There's ingratiation, which we've heard, I want to talk about your triumph.
Yeah.
There's also and I'm just speculating here because you're also a photojournalist and your dad's a photojournalist and our mutual friend Boniface Mwangi is a photojournalist. There's almost like a moral ambivalence that you have to hold and to the point of not expressing a view. What I'm saying is, if you were going to try to capture inside Netanyahu's house right now or inside the Hamas facility, you would need to hold your personal viewpoints deeply in check.
And that is what journalism was always about. It's supposed to be objective, unbiased reporting. Unfortunately, that has changed. That has changed completely over the last...
There's no such thing anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore.
Because what we considered, when I grew up, what we considered the CBC, Canadian Broadcast Corporation, similar to the KBC or the BBC, well, this was considered the most, they don't have advertisements, it's from the government.
The BBC was the same,
Yeah.
NBC, ABC,
These were considered
CBS.
objective, straightforward, blunt.
Absolutely.
The guy on the 10 o'clock news isn't smiling or frowning, They
just said it as it was.
say it.
And then it was up to you as the viewer to decide your opinion on that piece. Nowadays, unfortunately, journalists have become more important than the story in many cases. The personalities have become more important than the actual people that they're reporting
You
about.
gotta look good. How's your Instagram story? How many followers do you have on your Substack? How many readers do you have? And then we get this incredible fragmentation, which is so difficult to follow. My poor dad is 80 years old. I mean, I grew up with him reading the Toronto Star and the Globe Mail, 2 newspapers a day. I'm begging him to get a newspaper subscription again. He's like, I get everything I need on Apple News. I'm like, Dad, Apple News is an algorithm.
Yes.
It's run by the largest technology company in the world that owns more money than the top 100 companies in Europe. Like, you trust them to tell you what to read?
Yeah.
That's what you think about. So then my dad, my 80-year-old father, who's a brilliant man, he will come up to me and he'll say, oh, did you hear Taylor Swift got engaged?
But that's what his algorithm is giving him, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
When this is the guy that used to tell me what was going on in the stock market, he used to and I love my dad. It's not my dad's fault.
No.
It's just that as our brains get a little bit more
Young people
susceptible-
today think what they see on social media is reality. That if you read it on X or you see it on Instagram or on TikTok, Facebook maybe is a different generation, but what you see on social media is fact rather than saying this is somebody's viewpoint. Go and check with 3 or 4. If I want to know the reality behind a news story or a breaking news story or any event, I will have to watch 4 or 5 different
That's
channels.
exhausting.
It's completely exhausting. Read 3 or 4 different
And it
newspapers.
takes a level of intellectual discernment that is not taught anymore, and it's very difficult to parse.
We are in an age where people want to get everything in 148 characters.
I saw,
And you can't.
I saw on Twitter, and I refuse to call it X. I just think Twitter's a far better name. And a post on X is so inferior to a tweet on Twitter. So it's Twitter to me still. I saw on Twitter like last week a shot of like Alcaraz, #1 ranked men's tennis player at some, not the big open, but this whatever the junior tour, like falling over, grabbing his leg and screaming in pain, and the person who like hovered over their thing, and their thing said like something legit, like it sounded legit. They had a lot of followers. It's like, oh no, Alcaraz down severe pain, Achilles. So I thought, oh my gosh, poor Alcaraz, like he snapped his Achilles.
Yes.
Then later in the day, I'm like walking through an airport or something, and I see in the corner of the screen, Alcaraz wins.
1-6-2-6-2. Yeah, I remember that
I
day.
was like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I thought he snapped his Achilles. And I Google it, and it's like, there's no mention of this anywhere.
No,
It's like he fell
no.
down for a second.
Yeah.
But I thought
twisted his ankle.
I
That's
thought
it.
for sure it was like, he's like, because I saw that on Twitter, and it looked like from a good source. It had a lot of followers. It had the photo evidence. I knew he was playing that day. He was wearing the new purple clothes with the blonde hair. I was like, this is a fresh video. Like it passed
And
through
it
my
did
brain,
happen, but it
passed through
wasn't-
my brain like it was a fact.
But it did happen, and it was a fact. But it wasn't Achilles. It was basically he twisted his ankle.
Yeah.
But it's that split second when you capture something.
Yeah.
That then is blown out of proportion.
And so
And
hard,
we
though,
seem
'cause
to
I
do that a
trust this
lot.
guy.
We seem to do that a lot with context. Now there's no context, and this is what journalism and photojournalists, and in particular, now I tell young people when I have a chance to speak to people or lecture at universities, the chances of a photojournalist, a real photojournalist, being the first person at a breaking news story with the first pictures is like winning the lottery. Those are the odds. Because there will always be somebody with a mobile phone that will capture the bomb blast, the accident,
Plane
car
crash.
accident, plane crash, whatever it is, train crash, whatever it might be. So our job now has changed from being the bearer of
Breakers
the
of the
news
news, yeah.
to providing context and background and reality, and giving people a historical look at why this incident happened, what is the context behind it, and then where are we going to go in the future, rather than just that one snapshot.
Yeah, 100%. And how both infuriating that must be for those that have practiced in the craft and skill of true photojournalism, and how also worrisome it is for those like me who are slightly paranoid about living in a panopticon, like a surveillance state where nothing can happen without everyone having a film of it. Doesn't that make you think that you're always on tape? We are
does.
always on
Yeah.
tape. I could walk out of this place.
Yeah.
I could go to my hotel. I'm being filmed, tracks followed the whole time. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
That's like people would just accept that this is okay.
Yeah, no, it worries the hell out of me that we have no privacy, whether it's other people filming you or it's the CCTV coverage
Yeah.
that seems to be everywhere on most city streets. This is one of the good things about living in Africa is that we don't have that kind of
Yeah.
coverage.
There's no
And
police looking like if
they're
something
supposed to be, but most of it
but they're
doesn't
not
work.
tracking your
Yeah.
faces and matching up
No,
with
not yet.
databases.
Not
Yeah.
yet. It'll
Yeah.
come because again, we are very tech savvy.
Yeah.
Kenya in
It's gonna-
particular
it's
is
gonna
very
happen.
tech savvy.
But privacy is the new luxury. Like if you can go off to some distant island that you own,
Yes.
that's like no one knows where Jeff Bezos is because he has a $180 million yacht. It's in the middle of the ocean.
Yes.
So he's hiding. He's living in hiding.
Somebody still knows.
Somebody might
Somebody
know.
still
Yeah.
knows. There's satellites, remember? So somebody still knows.
Remember Elon Musk? Elon Musk buys Twitter, and one of the first thing he does is disable the feed of the guy who was tracking his plane.
Yes, that's right.
So he said the bird is free. We'll take off the handcuffs, and the first thing I'm gonna do is shut down you, shut down you, shut down you. You're out
The
here.
hypocrisy is it's mind blowing, but nobody calls these people out on it.
Or they do, and that gets the algorithm has decided to mute that
Yes.
story.
Suppress it.
Suppress
Yeah,
it because
suppress it.
someone owns the algorithm.
Yeah.
So just for those that don't know, so your dad is like the world's preeminent photojournalist, but then in 1980, in the early 80s, he covers something that's sort of truly life-changing for him and a lot of people. And then he very sadly has an untimely and early demise. Would you mind just sharing those two incidents? And this is kind of wrapped around the way, you at age 15 sort of learned about your dad through a blue-covered, hardcover book that's written by Brian Tetley, which, by the way, you can follow under 778.59 for art/photography/filmmaking/video production. Because we're kind of underneath this umbrella of this book, The Story of Mo Amin, which I have right here and I'll show up on the camera. To talk about, and by the way, the back says, Massacre on the Horn, Bloodbath in Bangladesh, Bakassa and the Congo, Bombs in Beirut, and, in big letters, Ethiopian Famine, 1984.
So the famine was, he'd been covering Ethiopia for decades, but the famine was, there was rumblings of a famine. There was rumors of a famine. You asked about the hat
A dictator
earlier
was
on.
running the country.
Yeah, Mengistu Haile Mariam was running the country. There was a rebel movement from the north, which was trying to oust Mengistu. And there had been drought, almost 10 years of drought. And then, the famine started coming into effect because Mengistu was using food as a weapon. So he was strangling the amount of food
Kind
that
of like
could
what's
go up.
happening in Palestine.
Absolutely right.
It's
And
exact-
what is
because-
happening in Sudan, what is happening in northern Ethiopia again today.
These are happening today.
Happening
so
today.
I'm not aware of Sudan.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's
In
not on
Sudan, there's 26 million people on the verge of starvation. It's one of the great untold stories of this world
Right now.
At the moment, right now, as we speak.
Okay,
And
we must uncover it. By the way, I'm doing this. Why am I in Nairobi for 4 days doing 3 interviews back to back? I'm trying my best to take a 55 country, 1 billion person populace and bring stories back to our listenership, which is global. But if I look at the top countries that listen, it's Canada, US, England, Australia. There's some China, there's some India, there's some Japan, but we're not getting these stories at all. So Ethiopian famine, there's a rebel coming in. He's using food as a weapon. He's purposely starving his own populace,
Yes.
which is millions of people.
yes,
Which is
there's about 8 or 9
which is a
million people
weaponized-
on the verge of
which is
starvation.
a tool of war, as is happening in Palestine and Sudan and northern Ethiopia today. Then there's rumors of it.
There's rumors because those days there was no mobile phones, there was no satellites, there was no drones, there was none of that. So, and he, through his contacts, through the people that he knows, hears about this, and hears about the situation. But it's almost impossible to get permission from the Ethiopian government in order to get to these areas in the north because there's also a war happening, a civil war that's going on. So it's very easy for the Ethiopian government to deny.
You can't just rent
permission.
tails and
And you don't have, he works his contacts and everything, and eventually gets the permission only because the people in the Ministry of Information in Ethiopia realize that the roads and flight networks have been blocked and stopped because of the war. So there's no way, even if they give permission, there's no way for them to get there. So, not knowing that he had had conversations with World Vision, which at that time was one of the largest NGOs in the world.
Of course. I can picture the logo right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And World Vision had a plane with food, but no permissions. The government wasn't going to give them permission. So he had done this deal with Peter Searle, who was the head of World Vision at the time, and said, Fry Peter, if I get the permissions, you get us on that plane and we go to northern Ethiopia. And that's how they made it there. And the Ethiopian government
get it. So they
didn't-
said
So the government didn't know that he had any
government got
contact
the
with
permission.
Yeah.
His contacts had a plane, World Vision with food.
with no permission.
With no permission.
And
so he
so
put
they
them together.
exactly, and they
This is
got on that.
amazing.
They
It's kind
got
of like
on
helping
that.
the ambulance driver get to the hospital again.
Exactly. And so they got there, him, BBC correspondent Michael Burke, and BBC radio correspondent Mike Wooldridge, the three of them, and got on this plane, landed in Mekelle in northern Ethiopia, and basically walked into the single largest natural disaster or human disaster of the 20th century.
Just to give people the size of the scope of what was happening. So 10
10 million
billion
people on the verge of starvation.
What do you mean on the verge?
On the verge, like with nothing, or like people
Yeah,
who were
yeah.
not lost.
Like, there's nothing in
like
the
a
stores.
lost-
There's nothing in the harvest. There's no food coming
They've
in.
moved out of their villages and their homes and come to these, bigger
The
areas.
photos we all remember through the 80s of the emaciated
Children
young, basically bones with flies around them.
Absolutely right. And so they stepped into this famine. And, the footage that came out of that is the footage that it was the single longest news piece ever broadcast in broadcast history.
The single
Longest,
news
8
piece.
minutes. It was an 8-minute piece, which in the history of broadcasting had never been broadcast on prime time television. So BBC, CBC.
So he got this. He sold it through his company.
Well, no, he was working with the BBC. He was working with an organization
he had
called
some
Reuters.
reasons. Yep.
He was a bureau chief for an agency called Viz News,
Okay.
which then became Reuters Television in the 90s. And the BBC was one of the owners of Viz News. So it was a BBC team,
Yep.
Michael Burke and Mike Wooldridge, and he was doing the filming. And it went out on the BBC first, and then NBC, who was their affiliate
With the
partner,
government, of course, not knowing about this.
with the Ethiopian government not knowing about this until it was too late. And NBC in the US with Tom Brokaw picked up that.
Of course.
A CBC crew was a
Take
few
that
days.
story.
Yeah, a CBC crew was a few days behind them, and they then also did a big deal of
And
a
it
big
became
story.
the front page news of the whole
And
world.
it became the single. Yeah, I mean, over a billion people watched that
Wow.
news.
And just so
piece.
people know, the world population at the time was like 4 to 5 billion.
So Live Aid, then Band Aid, Do They Know It's Christmas? Bob Geldof watched this piece
You
on
went
BBC.
through that real quick. So for people
Yeah.
that don't know,
So
Bob
Bob
Geldof.
Geldof watched this on the news and decided that he needed to do something. And sitting around and being outraged or being disgusted was not good enough.
Love
So
that.
he was not a very successful singer. The Boomtown Rats was not a very successful band at the time, but he had contacts in the music industry. So he got people together and created this super group that was called Band Aid, which had people like George Michael and Sting and Bono. It was this. It was. I don't remember all of the
I thought it was
all
like
of the
Axl
artists.
Rose was in there.
Not for
not-
Band Aid.
oh,
I'm
no,
not sure. For
Michael
Band Aid.
Jackson?
No, that was We Are the World.
Okay,
Now we're
that's
looking
We Are
at the
the World.
UK. This was the UK
Okay.
version of
But
the
pretty
song.
much like they take the top singers. Imagine right now,
George Michael,
everybody together.
Boy George,
on one stage.
yeah,
singing
David Bowie. All of them were part of the Band Aid
with,
initiative.
with call in, please, and pledge some money.
Well, this
here.
was just the recording of the song first. And then so they recorded Do They Know It's Christmas, and it came out on Christmas. Massive response, I think, became the fastest selling single of all time.
Who wrote that song?
So that was a combination of Midge and Bob Geldof that wrote
They wrote that
Do They
song.
Know It's Christmas. So then Harry Belafonte, who was this amazing singer as well as activist and campaigner of human rights, a UNICEF Goodwill ambassador back in the day. Harry is inspired by what Bob has done in the UK and decides that we need to do the same thing in the US. So he pulls in Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder and Quincy Jones, and they record "We Are the World" with 40 of America's most popular musicians, from Springsteen to Dylan, Bob Dylan.
Michael Jackson there.
Michael Jackson was there.
Okay.
Michael Jackson and Lionel Richie wrote the song.
We Are the World.
We Are the World. They wrote "We Are the World." Quincy Jones was the maestro that put everything together. And you had basically Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder.
Everyone.
I mean, everyone who was anyone in the music industry in the U.S. was there. And they recorded this song, which to date is, I think, the third largest selling single of all time.
Wow.
And it became an anthem for the ages. And then Geldof in the summer of 1985, July 1985, puts together Live Aid. And Live Aid is still the single largest concert in our history.
Really?
Still, to this day.
How big was it?
Well, 1.9 billion people watched Live Aid on television.
And
that was 40% of the world's population
and did
at
this
the time.
work? Did all this...
Billions and billions of dollars were raised.
And?
7 or 8 million people's lives were saved in Ethiopia.
How many people
a
died?
million and a half died.
1.5 million died of them, 7 to 8 million.
But we were talking about 10 million earlier.
10 million on the verge.
So you're looking at about 8.5 million people survived because of those pictures, because of that movement. And 40 years on, what's interesting, Neil, is when the world is in a much worse place than it was in the 1980s, we have so much more technology and resources, but yet we cannot do a movement like that again. And this is a question that fascinated me and drove me and my partner Chip to make our new documentary called Stand Together as One. And this came out a couple of months ago in the U.S., doing the circuit of the film festivals at the moment.
The famine, the music, the impact.
So we look at the famine and the story of the famine. We look at the music. We look at, Band-Aid USA for Africa, which is We Are the World, and Live Aid. And then we look at where the money went over the last 40 years. And it's a great story because USA for Africa in particular was only supposed to be around for 2 or 3 years for famine relief efforts. And 40 years on is still going, still giving $500,000 a year to different organizations around the continent, whether it's a community radio station in Senegal or an LGBT theater group in Uganda or an orphanage in Ethiopia. They still are giving $5,000, $10,000 grants to like 60 or 70 organizations.
From the propulsive force of this 1.9 billion person watched concert, you still are getting $500,000 a day.
From the song of We Are the World, not even from the concert.
Oh, not even from the concert.
This from
Just-
We Are the
just like
World
the
itself.
royalties.
The royalties of We Are the World, the downloads now that there's Spotify and all these other platforms.
Downloads, yeah.
So the downloads are still happening. Every time there's a crisis, We Are the World is revisited in terms of an anthem that people can use to mobilize humanity. But we really do need to mobilize humanity again. And there's never been another concert like Live Aid.
No.
There's never in our history, there never was one before that. And there's never where two continents simultaneously have 16 hours of live music. You have the biggest musicians, Queen's, Freddie Mercury's, most famous performance was at Live Aid in Wembley.
And this is all happening. You're like 14 years old.
I'm like 15 years old. I'm not realizing that this is all because of my father.
But you're the only child of your father.
Yes.
You're the only child of your father and your mother.
Yes.
And you have this giant thing happening around you.
But I had no idea that this was, we watched Live Aid and whatever. We loved the music because I knew. He had no idea about music or had no clue about who these musicians were and what they were. But I didn't realize the importance of the fact that it was his images that created this movement, that started this movement, that changed history and the history of humanitarian aid as well. The 1984-85 was pivotal in how NGOs operated globally. It became a business. Sadly, in a bit of a negative way, it became $1 trillion business as well. There were hundreds of NGOs that were formed because of the famine in Ethiopia, and it became a business. Sadly, instead of it being to help people in a lot of ways, it was a business.
And it wasn't that many years after that your dad sadly passed away.
So then we fast forward to 1991, which is the fall of Mengistu, the dictator. The rebel armies now have made it to Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, and they're taking over the country. Mengistu flees to Zimbabwe, to his friend Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe. But there's a massive explosion in the city that was set off. There was the largest ammunition dump in Africa, was buried under one of the shanty towns in Addis Ababa. And this somehow nobody knows how it went up. Someone either sabotaged it, or it went off on its own. But this huge explosion, 4:00 in the morning, he goes out to cover the explosion. There's a secondary explosion which blows off his left arm. His left arm gets taken out by an RPG from this ammunition dump. His sound engineer, John Mathai, dies next to him, is killed immediately by the force of the blast next to him. So he loses his left arm. He's evacuated back to Nairobi. They amputate the arm. Within 3 months, he scours the world for a bionic arm that will allow him to shoot again, to film and photograph again. Finds it through NASA technology at a clinic in Ohio in the US, and they fix him with this bionic arm that's designed to operate a camera lens.
So he flies home from Ethiopia with no arm.
Yeah, airlifted by an air ambulance.
And with just his arms gone.
Yeah, I mean, his hand was intact up to the elbow, but between the wrist and the elbow, there was nothing left. They thought that they might be able to use, they had
or something.
Yeah, they put a tournament.
Imagine the sheer amount of shock that would cause.
And he was lucky; he was carrying his stills camera around his on his shoulder, so the RPG went into the stills cameras, and that saved it.
RPG stands for
rocket propelled grenade. That it was part of the stuff that was in the explosion.
Yeah,
and his right arm.
Camera saved his life, and the baptism by fire many years ago in the KGB-run Zanzibar prison also steeled his resolve to handle this. What is almost like psychologically insurmountable crisis.
Yeah, I mean, there was no one-armed cameraman in the world.
It almost seems, and I don't mean to sound, this might sound odd, but it's almost like, so he dies in an Ethiopian hijacked plane, your dad.
5 years later, yes.
I mean,
yes.
This story.
I mean, it's a hell of a story.
It's like a crazy freaking story, man.
You can't write this stuff. Put it that way. I mean, people will not believe.
You're the only child of him.
Yeah, people will not believe, and we're hoping there's a feture film in the works as well, a biopic on his life.
Who's playing him?
We don't know yet. We're talking to a couple of people, but there's some interesting people. There is the wonderful Gurinder Chadha of Bend It Like Beckham fame, who will be the producer, who's the executive producer. She's written the script with this wonderful writer in South Africa.
My gosh. And what also pressure for you though?
No pressure for me, Neil, at all.
You don't feel you got.
Look, I know there'll never be.
Like
he was a unique individual, and there's no, these kinds of people come around once in a generation that can do those things. He was only 52 years old when he died, which is very young. I'm older than him. I'm 55 now.
You've lived longer.
So I've lived longer than he has. But in his lifetime, he accumulated this archive of 8.5 million images, 25,000 hours of video.
I was basically steward.
I've done 2 books in my 55 years. He published over 100 coffee table books and stuff in that time, as well as making over 100 documentaries and covering every
Never
major
wanna quit
news.
this and go be a doctor.
You know, no, too late now. Unfortunately, I wish I should have. I should have done that a long time ago. No, I always had this bug from when I was 8 or 9 years old. I started shooting when I was 8 or 9 years old. I was first published when I was 10 in Time magazine, and I don't think they knew it was a 10-year-old that was whose photo it was. But I used to go and cover the East African Safari Rally with him. And that was where I learned my photography and my passion. And he never wanted me to do this. Like his father before him, he was like, you know, get a real job. Man. Don't do this. But that's all I ever wanted to do.
What is up with the
So I went to university.
Do not as I do, do as I say.
He said it's a tough life. It's not a great life. You know, it's difficult with family and everything. And because I never didn't see much of him. I mean, I went away to university and did a degree in journalism. But he came to visit my university. He came for my graduation for one day. That was it. That's the only time he ever came to visit me in university. I would come back here over holidays. But
he was distant. He was an absent.
Well, he was absent because he was busy all the time.
I'm not like saying he wasn't busy, and obviously his career certainly speaks for itself. I mean, I get it, but and in times and eras. But like, if I were to ask you like lessons as a father that you gleaned.
Well, yeah, not to be like, I figured that if my children ever have to make a film about me, then I've seriously failed them. You know, I made a documentary on his life called Mo and Me.
I don't mean that way. I'm saying
no, look, he was
like, you're a present dad.
Yes, I've spent a lot of time. I have a very close relationship with my daughters.
This is the opposite of what your dad.
Yes. I know that he loved me. I know that he adored me. I think that he felt he had more time. I don't think he anticipated living only 52 years.
Of course.
And I think he anticipated that we would have more time together to be able to, but he still was trying to finish things.
When I'm in my 60s and he's
30s, exactly.
We will have life
these
together.
Exactly.
Though he was constantly putting himself in a clearly dangerous situation.
But I mean, the hijacked Ethiopian Airlines plane that he died on was it wasn't a situation he put himself in.
No.
It was a bunch of amateurs hijacking a flight that ran out of fuel and crashed. And
someone else captured that video.
And yes, a honeymoon couple from South Africa on the beach of the Comores Islands, just filming each other on their honeymoon, and turned around and saw this plane 737 coming out and crashing into the ocean. That was 1996.
That he wants the arm.
Was the arm. November 96.
He came to your graduation.
Yes, in Vancouver. In Vancouver. So I went to university in Vancouver.
University of British Columbia?
No. Actually, I went to Langara, which was a college at the time, because when I was there, Langara was the only institute on the West Coast that taught journalism. UBC or SFU never taught journalism or communications. Now they're big deals on that. But the Vancouver Community College system had BCCI, Langara, and then VCC or something, Vancouver Community College, and they taught journalism.
Wow.
And
Canada.
And the only I was had the option of going to McGill or Ryerson in Toronto, which was also big on journalism. But I couldn't handle the weather on that side. So, and I had family. My mom's family was in Vancouver. Yeah.
You don't feel pressure.
Because I made it very clear to people that I will never achieve what he achieved. I will do my own thing.
You say that right up front.
I will do my own thing.
I like that. I will. I'm not in this game.
No.
I'm not playing. I'm
happy to be.
He got a royal flush on this career. I'm happy to just get a couple
and I still get introduced as his son, and that makes me proud. I still get introduced as his son, especially from a certain generation of people. Yeah. They will say, "Oh, do you remember this person? This is his son." So, and I put the pressure on myself because I chose the same career as him.
Yeah.
If I had been something completely different, like a doctor, an accountant, or whatever, I wouldn't have that type of pressure. But then I think that I would have lost out on what I love doing, which is telling stories, which is doing interviews, which is I had my own talk show for
I know.
for 5 years.
I
on
know.
the
I told
Scoop,
people here I was
you know.
interviewing you. They're all like, "Oh, is he still on the TV?"
Yeah. So I did the Scoop for 5 years,
Yeah.
and 150 amazing interviews with people from around the continent. We've been working on building Kenya's largest museum for the last 5-6 years
Whoa.
with the government.
Whoa, what's it
And
called?
It's called Uhuru Gardens National Museum.
gonna be in
It
Nairobi?
hasn't. It's in Nairobi. It's by Wilson Airport. It's this magnificent, absolutely magnificent
cool.
museum.
I gotta go see it.
It's not open yet. Sadly.
I can't go.
So you can't
can't
go
see the film
because
yet either.
it's
not out yet.
it's not open yet, and it's just again this things have slowed down.
But
since
when
it's-
you work on the projects that you work on, these things take forever. Like that's just the way they are.
That's just the way they are. But what it did give me an opportunity to do was to interview people that have been instrumental in this country's history, which I love. People in their 90s, 100s, 80s, 90s, 100s who have never spoken about their lives and played a huge role in getting Kenya's independence and stewarding the country through the post-independence era. And I absolutely love it. And then I find that we have all of their content in our archive because Dad photographed them, filmed them, was at the same events that they were presiding over, and so we have all this amazing content.
Some of the photos he said he took was like,
I mean, it's insane. And we look at countries, people, Mozambique to Nigeria to...
He was everywhere.
The Middle East. He was the first person to ever be allowed to photograph the Hajj in 1972. And he which was the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. The first person to ever be allowed to do it. So he went for 4 years and photographed it. And his first coffee table book was Pilgrimage to Mecca.
Wow.
It was the first book on the Hajj.
They let him do it. Why?
The Saudi royal family agreed for him to come and gave him all the facilities. And he did that in 1972.
He had a great black book.
And he had these contacts. He was made Commander-in-Chief of the Pakistan Armed
See
Forces.
the book right behind you.
Yeah.
So
he was made Commander-in-Chief of the Pakistan Armed Forces for 9 months by Zia-ul-Haq because Zia wanted a book on the armed forces. So it ended up Defenders of Pakistan was what it was called. It was a book and a documentary. So he went and he's got stuff that nobody in the world will ever get.
Of course.
You can't get access to armed forces now.
Yeah.
He did 19 hours in F-16s photographing, air-to-air combats and then you got all the Air Force in front of K2 and the Himalayas and, incredible content.
Yeah.
You never get the Hajj in the 70s, very different place.
So you are just like exploding with stories. And like, I'm trying to we're just touching skimming the surface of so much here. And unlike your dad, you're very present with your kids.
Yes.
Which I'm going to say, that's a very different, but equally, if not greater, form of legacy.
I hope so. I hope so.
I believe this.
I think their mom is...
I'm a continent away from my kids
their
right now.
Their mom is instrumental in how well they were brought up.
Yeah.
I mean, she because I also traveled an enormous amount in the early years, in the first sort of 25 years of their lives. I traveled an enormous amount, but their mum was the sort of a very, very influential figure in bringing them up to the young ladies that they are. And one is in Toronto, works with Zurich, Canada, as an underwriter. One is a lawyer in London. So they've done okay, and I think we've brought them up to be good girls.
And neither of them is a photojournalist.
They are excellent photographers, both of them.
I can imagine.
But this is not their profession.
By the
no.
way, Boniface Mwangi, our mutual friend and guest in chapter 104, I asked him for a question for you. I like to do this. And he said, do you think in an era of AI, there's still a career of photojournalism?
I think it's even more important now. I think the fact that people are not sure about... So one of the things that we want to do, and I'll discuss this with Boniface as well, one, we know that our archive is hugely valuable for AI companies because they don't have this. Now, when you type in AI or you search AI for things, you come back with a very white, Western, male-dominated answer.
Of
and
course,
response.
because they scooped the internet.
That's
and
what
that's
they
what
scooped
the internet was when they scooped it.
This kind of content that we have about countries in Africa and Southeast Asia, in the Middle East, about fashion and art and hairstyles and glasses
Central
and
African
culture
Republic,
and all of this stuff is not available because our archive is not digital. So it's never been online. We're still
please don't.
struggling with digitizing this
Yeah.
archive, but it's never been online. So nobody has been able to
I
scrub it.
can't steal it from
And
you
the-
because we never put it
Exactly.
anywhere where they could see it.
But we want to make it available, especially for educational purposes, for people to be able to make sure that we get our own, when AI makes things about Africans, that they have the right reference points for it. So we want to make it available and to do that. But one of the things, this is when I say we, it's me and again my partner in the US, because he has an equally large archive of content from different parts of the world, from South America, from the US sides, from even parts of Africa, and he's still photographing. So it adds current content to our archive. But one of the things we want to put together is an institute of truth. So where the original content can sit and people can come and visit, physically see
with
original
timestamps.
negatives
You know, it's
and
before
slides
2023 when ChatGPT started.
and see the original picture. Because even when Dad was shooting images, they cropped them when they were in the darkroom. They would crop them based on what was important at the time. Now, in the context of history, that cropping also could change the perspective of that image. So to be able to see the original negative or the original image when in an age where we don't know what we're seeing, whether it's fake or real, I think is hugely important. And a university like the University of Toronto or Cambridge University or Oxford
you
to
have to be
house
so
this,
careful,
to
though.
house this archive, physical archives, and actually allow people to come in and watch the original video of Black Hawk Down or the Rwandan genocide or the Ethiopian famine before AI has got its hands on it and changed it, I think would be hugely invaluable for education.
The only problem is, how do you create a new trusted institute in an era of such high distrust? I mean, to what extent could something even as stable, secure, and seemingly impervious to distrust as like the University of Toronto, but then we see what's happened to Harvard.
Yes. Yeah. That's the problem. Is also where
they've smudged shit over the Harvard
Yeah.
Veritas logo by saying you can't do this. We're going to take all your money. You can't let in people from foreign. And then they have to fight the government, and there's lawsuits. Then Columbia folds, so that looks like all the
other ones are going to fold as well.
And then it's just like, then you just ostracize the school, and now the school has its own Harvard's. Well, I mean, Harvard's like a 500-year-old institute of truth that has held standards
Absolutely.
for time. But even if you put the archive there, then you go down with the ship.
Exactly. So again, maybe it's an
Speaking
independent
as an
institute.
alumni who's a degree now looks a little shoddier.
It could be an independent institute that's set up. I mean, there's one thing, Neil. There's no shortage of money in the world. There's no shortage of people with money in the world who want to do something good, that will want to have something that is there. It's not only our archive that would be in this. It would be open to there's people in their 70s and 80s and 90s, photographers who have captured some of the most iconic moments in our history, whether it's news or politics or sports or entertainment, and they are sitting on their original content. They don't have the ability to digitize all of this.
Yeah.
It's sitting in cabinets and boxes,
Yeah.
and they're gonna die, and their children and grandchildren have no interest in this at all, and will probably chuck it out or burn it or do something. And if we can get our hands on that stuff, and because we know between us, we know other photographers, and we can help them digitize, get hold of their original content, give them legacy, pay them some money. That I think to me would be a real fulfillment of my father's, because I don't think my father would have wanted his archive to sit and rot in shelves, in boxes and cabinets.
Of course not.
He would have wanted it to be used
course.
to educate future generations of people.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we would like to go.
Vital capture of human history, and not just human history. Some of the photos that, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see is like a lion kind of curling in to drink water. I mean, it's everything. I've done a terrible job as an interviewer. I don't say this very often on my own podcast, but so excitedly thirsty have I been for these like human altering stories that I have failed to even mention your other two formative books. I wonder if, to close us off, you might tell us a little bit about how they shaped you, and we can try together to loop those into this larger epic fabled conversation similar to the ones that inspired you, including at a young age when you read the Iliad by Homer, Iliad, written controversially either in the 7th or 8th century by Homer, who lived and died in 8th century Greece. There's very few details about his life and death. He also wrote famously the Odyssey. There's a million covers, so why even describe one? But, obviously it's an epic poem set during the final weeks of the Trojan War, focusing on the Greek hero Achilles and his anger towards Agamemnon, the commander of the Greek forces. You can follow this one under 883.01 for literature / classical modern Greek literature / classical Greek epic poetry. It's interesting to mention that because, of course, the book you read in your 20s, which also introduced symbolism and fables to you or amplified it, was the DaVinci Code by Dan Brown. That came out in 2003 from Doubleday. People will know this because Dan Brown is alive today. He was born in 1964 in New Hampshire. And this is, I read it when it came out. Everybody read it when it came out. Robert Langdon, of course, is in Paris on business. He's a symbologist at Harvard, and he gets an urgent late-night phone call. The elderly curator of the Louvre has been murdered inside the museum. Near the body, police have found a baffling cipher. While working to solve the enigmatic riddle, Langdon is stunned to discover it leads to a trail of clues hidden in the works of DaVinci, visible for all to see, yet disguised by the painter. File that one under 813.54 for 1945 to 1999 American literature. So how did these two books kind of fold into this larger story we're talking about here?
Look, I think these were more sort of personal. The Iliad, I just found the story of the Trojan War fascinating. How it began, all these characters. Well, I don't know if they were real or not. Homer, was a poet and I'm sure had a lot of creative license even back then. But the stories of Achilles and Agamemnon and Menelaus and Paris and Troy and taking Helen, the most beautiful woman, away, stealing her away and causing the downfall of this great empire. It was just, it's just to me was just fascinating.
Yeah.
And how the gods kind of got involved as well, or some on this side, some on that side, and how they manipulated man. And I just thought this is such an interesting way to describe history.
Yeah.
And it's and I've followed then the Odyssey and all these other sort of the Iliad, all these different Greek books who have, as you said, there've been so many covers since then. There've been feature films. Brad Pitt was Achilles in Troy.
He was very sexy in that.
Yes. And you've got Eric Bana playing Hector. And there's tragedy, there's hope, there's joy, there's love, there's all the things that I think is part of our life.
Human story.
But it's a fantastic story. And
you read that in school?
I read, well, we were taught, Latin and divinity and stuff in primary school and in high school. In Nairobi. These were British schools, right? These were part of the British curriculum.
I was going to ask, because sorry to say this, I've tried to crack the Iliad or the Odyssey a couple times, and I'm a slow mind, Salim. I'm like, this is hard. This is too hard for me to read and understand. Did you have like a, like an edition or a translator? Do you remember, how do you?
They are sort of simpler books that don't have the complicated language of Homer.
Okay, so we gotta go there.
So you can just, if you Google them, there's plenty of different versions that some have been turned into novels and actual stories.
Or do the thing I do, which is read the Wikipedia plot summary, then try to read the book at the same time.
But so such interesting.
How cool that you got to sign that at school, though.
Yeah. I thought it was really.
We kind of skipped over that stuff.
I thought Greek mythology was fascinating for me, and then it kind of dovetails a little bit into comic books, because again, these are those ancient Greek heroes are, the modern versions of Superman and Batman and others are, I think, derived a little bit from those heroes. Their powers, the way I think the Schuster, Jerry Schuster, and the people that wrote comic books, Stan Lee and others, I think, got their inspiration for many of their comic book heroes from the Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And so going into comic books was something really natural. There was a little store in downtown Nairobi that used to sell comic books, and I'd go with my mom. She used to go and buy her Indian film magazines, Film Fair, and Stardust, and all these things about Bollywood magazines. And I would go and get a comic book every week with
And that's
her,
why you have a shelf.
and then have the entire cupboard of comic books.
Wow.
Now I buy the graphic novels, which
Yes.
they're rather than the weekly.
But it's almost like
comic
the Iliad
books.
was like, it
It
wasn't
was
drawn,
a
but
precursor
yeah.
of this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was a precursor of these.
Epic tales of, it's
Yeah.
and then it kind of sort of feeds into Dan Brown.
Absolutely. I mean, again, this idea of I was always fascinated about how religion has played such an important role in every major war I think we've had in our history.
Period.
Yeah, there is
What you
religion.
believe versus what I believe.
The
We cannot agree.
religion is
We
always
must fight.
the underlying principle, and understanding Catholicism and Islam. I mean, I went to a very Christian school. We would sing the songs
Your
of
dad was
praise.
Muslim and your mom was Ismaili. You
But
were
the
Christian education.
Christian education, we sing the songs of praise every morning in assembly. We'd learn divinity and the Bible as part of our classes. Our daughters went to a very Christian high school here. And I wanted them to do that because of the discipline that was there, as well as understanding and learning about other religions, because I think it's very important.
Yeah.
And they obviously they did madrasas and went and learned about their own religion as well, but were able to get a good overview of other things. And I think in a world of increasing intolerance,
Yeah.
this is very important to educate people on this. I remember somebody saying to my daughters in their high school, one of the daughters said, "Oh, but what do you know about Jesus? You're Muslim. What do you know about Jesus and stuff? And you guys don't even teach that." And she said, "Well, hang on a minute. Jesus is named more in the Quran than Muhammad is.
No way.
Jesus' name come because he is one of our primary prophets. In Islam, Jesus is considered to be above Muhammad even in terms of prophets. The only difference is we don't consider him to be the son of God. But he is on the day of judgment, Jesus is going to come, not Muhammad." So, this is the teachers were like, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yes. In the Quran, Jesus is mentioned more than Muhammad as Prophet Isa." And so, this is, but people don't do this. They just assume that we are here and not understanding that every religion, major religion in the world, has come from the same place.
Well, yeah.
And it's we all believe the same thing, except we call them by different names.
Well, yeah.
But we believe about the same people.
And we change too. Like there's for those that have read *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, it was animals for quite a long time. It wasn't even people.
It wasn't people, yes. It was nymphs.
It was
And,
nymphs.
you do the tree nymphs, ocean nymphs. These
My
things.
mom's Hindu.
Yeah.
She also went to Kenya High.
Yeah.
So she was learning Lord's
Yeah,
Prayer and stuff.
yeah.
But growing up, in the little kind of altar that my mom had, it's I'm seeing blue elephants with
Yeah.
many arms,
Absolutely.
And you started this, we started just chatting.
Yeah.
And you were talking Israel Palestine. You're talking about the work that your dad's done, opening up and exposing the world to not just Kenya, where he was born and raised, from people that have come from kind of colonial England, but also what he did in Ethiopia and Central African Republic, and going all over this continent, the dark continent, the continent that we didn't know what was going on in. And he added light and color and stories and meanings. And the more we see that, the more we realize that we are the same. We are connected. We all bleed the same color.
Absolutely. We bleed the same color. We shit the same poop. Everything is the same. There is nothing that is different about us. We may have, you're a product of your upbringing.
Yeah.
You're a product of your environment.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that is pure luck. Whether you were born in a palace in Europe or you were born in a slum in Kibera in East Africa, that is, you don't feel privileged because you had nothing to do with that. It is pure and utter luck. And so you need to just humble yourself to understanding this is where I was born. Let me make the best of what my situation and circumstances are. Not be envious or jealous of other people, and not look down at other people because of what you feel is your privilege in life. We are all born the same. It's just where we were born. That, and then you as a person had nothing to do with that. You had no influence on that. So, be good to people, be kind to people. I know, watching my father and how he operated, he was comfortable with, he would treat princes and kings and presidents the same as he would treat a waiter or a driver or a fixer or a woman selling fruit on the side of the road. He saw no difference in these people. And that's why people were open to talking to him, because he treated everybody exactly the same way.
You fill your father's shadow and legacy. You amplify it, you illuminate it, you enlarge it, you lengthen it. And the work he's done, your family has done, and your family continues to do, is making a tremendous difference in the world.
Oh, thank you, Neil. I'm not sure it is, but I appreciate you saying that.
I believe it is.
I appreciate
and I think
you
it
saying
will continue to do so in this era of disbelief. And I think that's really important. And I think your answer to Bonnie's question is quite profound. Salim Amin, thank you so much for coming on.
Neil, thank you very much, man.
It's been
Appreciate
an
it.
honor.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for doing this. I
I-
really appreciate it. It was fun. Real fun talking to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey everybody, it's me, it's just Neil, hanging out in my basement, listening back to the powerful, kind, open-hearted, big-brained Salim Amin, regaling us with stories. I mean, we could have gone on and on and on. So many quotes jump out to me. Like, right now, when you search AI for things, you come back with a very white, Western, male-dominated answer. And kind of looping that back into the letter from Dan at the beginning, like, we're all together grappling and connecting with what AI is, what it means, how we use it, how we don't, where we want it in our lives, where we don't, where we can see it in our lives, where we can't. And so I think it's refreshing to just kind of hear that perspective and remember that, like, I went to the doctor and I have low vitamin D. I've had low vitamin D forever. I'm like plowing vitamin D. I'm like taking 1,000 a day, then 2,000 a day, then 5,000 a day. And I always get my blood checked and it's always low. Eventually, my doctor says to me, he's like, it might just be that the data from the study is a bunch of white men from North America. And I know you were born here, but he's like, your heritage and ancestry comes from a different part of the world. So maybe the numbers on your vitamin D score just are different. And it's nice to hear that because, you can't always know what data set you're comparing yourself to. So it's nice for somebody from Africa to point out that, hey, this is pretty biased. It's nice to kind of try to recognize and see the bias where we can. How about this quote? Our job, and he's talking about journalists, our job has changed from being the bearer of news to providing context and background and reality and giving people a historical look at why this incident happened, what the context is behind it, and then where are we going in the future rather than just a snapshot. It's true. I agree with that completely. Trust, truth, explanation. These things are more and more important than just kind of like there was a fire or here's a photo of a crazy scene. And I like the little sort of 60-second kind of first person camera snippets that like the New York Times is doing from their journalists. And I feel like in the current media complex, it just constantly and quickly evolves to something being new, everything following that, and then that thing not being new anymore, and then that thing being kind of littered with other ways that we can't see the truth anymore. So first person camera to the journalist is great. And then when you have first person camera to everybody, it's confusing. It's confusing, right? So I guess we have to just kind of keep thinking. I mean, for this show, 3 books, it's like long form journalism, long form interviews. And I do think in some sense, when you have conversations like we're having, an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, the truth doubles up. Like honesty comes through. You hear tone and intonation, the complexity of language and the kind of river-like flow of a conversation. And through that, you get reality. And so that's kind of a place that I'm clinging to. I still enjoy listening to podcasts that are longer. I like a good long Rich Roll podcast episode or Tim Ferriss episode. I don't always listen to the whole thing, but I like that is kind of where my brain wants to go. Books are like that, obviously. Short form video. More and more research keeps coming out saying it's bad for our brains. Okay. We knew that, but now we know that even more. Another quote, let me make the best of my situation and circumstances, not be envious or jealous of other people, and not look down at other people because of what you feel is privilege in your own life. A great and healthy and helpful mental reminder for us all. Thank you so much to Salim Amin for giving us 3 more books to add to our top 1,000, including number 548, Mo, The Story of Muhammad Amin by Brian Tetley. Number 547, The Iliad by Homer. Man, we didn't have that on the list yet, people. That was good to get out there. And number 546, The DaVinci Code by Dan Brown. I still remember reading that book and feeling that sort of, don't you love books that have 2-page chapters? Books with 2-page chapters is an awesome thing. I'm going to write that down. Books with short chapters. We got to add that to the list. By the way, if you don't get my daily awesome thing, you can just go to neil.blog and click newsletters. One of the newsletters I send out every single day at midnight is a daily awesome thing. I've been doing that since 2008. And I now made them all on one page at neil.blog/awesome things. So if you want to read thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of awesome things, you can go there. It's still a daily practice for me and something I have committed to for now too long to stop. And when I do stop it, I notice it. So I got to keep going. Thank you so much, Salim, for coming on the show. This concludes our 3-part chapter series where we flew to Africa and we did some different kind of conversations. I'm very excited about the conversations that we have coming. We've got Paul Hawken coming. We've got Morgan Housel coming. We've got Eve Harlow coming. We've got some great, great guests coming. As always, thank you so much for being here and thank you so much for listening.